Hello everyone. In this video lecture, we are going to cover lecture 13, which is basically towards the end of your class. So we will cover different types of topics such as GDP, per capita, standard of living, how can we increase the standard of living, and we're going to also look into what brings about economic growth. So this chapter is a little bit vivid or detailed, but I think we should be good. If you hear this video lecture, you should be well prepared for this lecture. So, what is economic growth and what is productivity? Economic growth, increased productivity of resources, and increased standard of living go and hand in hand. So, when we have more productivity of the factors of production, such as land, labor, and capital, there we experience economic growth, which in turn leads to increase in standard of living. Now, many things that contribute to one's standard of living cannot be quantified. Like there are a lot of things that can affect the quality of our life or the standard of our living, such as our experience in the past, or such as our memories with families, or other memories, or interactions with others. But we cannot really quantify these things or these experiences. So when we talk about standard of living in economics, we are basically excluding such good experiences or such good memories. Okay, we are only in economics, we are only concerned with the material standard of living. So the standard of living that we can quantify, that we can put a number to, that's what we are going to look into when we talk about standard of living in economics. Okay, so specifically, we look into the satisfaction or the benefit of basic wants and needs, as well as the satisfaction of higher order, more qualitative wants and needs. So, basically, what is the satisfaction that we are getting from our basic wants and needs, as well as the satisfaction that we are getting from the higher order needs? Okay, so anything that we can quantify in terms of satisfaction benefit, that will be considered a calculation towards standard of living. But items, things such as experience, memories, we cannot quantify those, so those are excluded from standard of living and in economics. So again, when the economy experiences economic growth, the standard of living for people grows, because during growth people will have more income, and as a result their overall standard of living will increase. Standard of living is basically a measure or indication of our economic well being. If the standard of living goes up, that means our economic well being has improved. If it goes down, that means we lost income and our well being has gone down. Okay, the way we calculate standard of living is basically take the real GDP of the country in a particular year and divide that by the total population. This is also known as the GDP per capita. So standard of living is also known as the GDP per capita, which is the GDP per person in the economy, and it is calculated by GDP divided by population, total population. Okay, so this measure is an average. It basically calculates an average in the economy, like any other average. Many of the population are above the average, and many of the population are below the average who have a low standard of living. So the number that we get for the standard of living by computing GDP divided by total population, that is an average that talks about all the citizens, average of taking into consideration all the citizens of the economy. Now there will be some people who will be below the average and they will have lower standard of living, and there will be some people who will be above the average and they will be enjoying higher standard of living. So let's do a quick example to see how we calculate the standard of living or GDP per capita, which are used interchangeably. So we here, if you look at the example we're given in the country of Islandia, so Islandia is a small country or island, the real GDP in 2017 was 200,000. So remember, understand that the number we use in the calculation to compute standard of living is real GDP. So the GDP number has already been adjusted for inflation. So we use the term real GDP, not nominal GDP. So the real GDP in 2017 was 200,000, and the small island had a total population of 15,000. Only 15,000 people live in the population, and the total GDP or output produced in that economy in 2017 was 200,000, and this has been adjusted for inflation. Now, if you're given with nominal GDP, you have to convert it to real GDP using the inflation, and we did that in our past video lectures. So you should know how to convert nominal GDP to real GDP by now, because we have already covered this in this class. So given this, I'm asking you, what is the GDP per capita, or what is your standard of living? It's the same thing as asking you to calculate what is the standard of living. So basically, we know that standard of living is calculated by, so standard of living is calculated using the formula real GDP divided by your total population. Okay, so in this country in 2017, the real GDP was 200,000 and the total population was 15,000. So if you compute that, you get an answer of $133. So that is the income or GDP per person, and that is our standard of living. So 100 per person, each individual is making $133. That's very low compared to what we have, but that's basically what, given the data we have, that is your standard of living. $133 per person is basically the standard of living, or the income made by each individual on average. Now some people can be above this average, some people can be below this average, but on average people make $133 in this island. So that's how you will calculate GDP per capita, or standard of living. So the standard of living again is an average, and it basically ignores the distribution of GDP, or who gets to consume the output. It is a good way to judge the economic well-being of the country as a whole. So it measures the country as a whole, but it is not a good measure to look at the distributions or the outliers. Okay, so as average output rises, the goods and services produced will also rise, and our satisfaction from consuming goods and services will also increase, right? If you produce more output in the economy, we will have more choices, so we will be able to satisfy more of our wants, and our satisfaction will go up, right? Which in turn will increase the standard of living. On the other hand, fewer wants and needs go unsatisfied, and when this happens, fewer wants and needs go unsatisfied, right? So that ultimately causes the standard of living to go up. So the economic goal of every society is basically to maximize the output of goods and services that satisfy the needs of the wants, and that satisfy the needs and wants of the citizens of the economy. So an economy wants to produce the maximum amount of output with limited amount of resources, so that the wants of the people, our consumers, are maximized or met, uh, so that satisfaction is maximized, and this ultimately helps to improve the standard of living. Government must also be able to maximize social welfare. One way to do this is to increase the standard of living, right? So it can achieve increase in standard of living by increasing more economic freedom, like less regulations and less compliance, and then also providing protection of private property rights, because that way people will feel more safe, that they have more authority and ownership on their assets and wealth. Otherwise people can come and take away their wealth. And other ways they can improve standard of living is by reducing taxes and less restrictions on trade. All these things will help to increase social welfare and increase standard of living in the economy. So the one way, it's so basically based on the formula, we can say that we can increase standard of living in two ways. Either we have to increase the total GDP or the total output, or we have to decrease the population. Now, decreasing the population means killing people, so that's not moral, right? That's unethical. We cannot do that. So that's not the focus. Population will grow, so we have to just make sure we manage the growth of population. But our main goal is basically to increase the level of output, so that it is faster than the population growth, which in turn will cause the standard of living to go up. So again, a nation's production possibility frontiers are the capacity of its economy for the production of goods and services, assuming a given level of given quantity or given fixed amount of resources, technology, and economic freedom. So in order to increase this capacity of the economy, we need to increase the amount of resources, we need to increase the efficiency of the resources, we need to have better technology, more technology, as well as we need to have more economic freedom so we can there are less restrictions, less rules, less compliance, so we can use the resources more freely without any type of interference. So we can look at each of the factors of production and see how we can increase the level of resources that will ultimately increase the standard of living of the economy. So that's what we're going to look into. The four resources or the four factors of production are land, labor, capital, and equipment. So how can we improve the efficiency and the quantity of land, which will ultimately increase the standard of living? So land is this type of resource is finite and fixed in quantity, right? Where we have only limited amount of natural resources, limited amount of minerals, and limited amount of land space, right? So only way to improve the efficiency of land is increasing the level of technology that can improve our ability to extract things from the land. So there are a lot of minerals, diamonds, and natural resources that are stuck way below the soil and ground, and these are very difficult to extract or very costly to extract, such as oil, a fossil fuel, coal. So these are very difficult to extract and very expensive. So maybe if we improve the technology that makes it cheaper to take out these resources from the ground easily and efficiently and at a low cost, then that is one way we can increase our standard of living. you know like oil technology, or the new technology has enabled extraction of oil from oil fields more easily. This has definitely increased oil reserves more rapidly around the world, and helped to increase the standard of living. So new technology also helped us to identify new oil fields or oil field sites where we can take out or bring out more oil and natural gas. So again, to improve the land, we have to make sure we have improved, we experience improvement in that level of technology that will help us to extract the different types of natural resources. And one example is of a natural resource is an oil, but there are other types of natural resources such as coal, natural gas, and then other types of minerals. Again, if there are improvements in the extraction process uh, and the technology that processes these natural resources, it will help us to improve the land resource, which in turn will improve standard of living. The next one is labor. This resource can be increased in several ways. Okay, the quantity of labor can increase by immigration, raising the retirement age, increasing the number of women entering the workforce. So the quantity of labor is not fixed. You can increase the quantity by bringing in more people through immigration, or increasing the retirement age so people can retire later, or making more women involved in the workforce. You can also, at the same time, improve the quality of the labor by providing more education, training, and experience that will help them to improve their efficiency, which in turn will increase the number of output and increase the standard of living. So, labor, you can increase both quantity and quality. Then we have capital. So investments in new capital goods can increase capital. So there are three sources of funding capital investments. So there are three ways we can there basically there are three sources of funding for capital investment. One is household savings, right? So if households save more versus consumptions, these savings funds can be used to make investments. The second one is undistributed earnings of businesses. So when businesses make profit, these profits go to the owners of the business. Now, if the owners decide not to take the profit and leave the profit with the company, then these profit can be used to make new investments for the company. And finally, foreign countries can be encouraged to make investments in the US, which in turn will basically be an investment on capital. Also, a favorable climate for capital investment must be maintained to keep investment funds coming in. So, if the government is too strict or if the tax rate is too high, then investments won't be coming in from foreign countries or even domestically. So, the government has to have a very relaxed tax and regulatory environment of the country, and they must be friendly to business firms in order to bring capital investments in the economy, which in turn will increase output and standard of living. Then finally, entrepreneurial activities. So things to bring more businesses, new businesses into the market. Again, the government has a role to play here. They have to make sure they have a very friendly tax environment for the corporations, for the businesses. They have a very relaxed regulatory environment. So it's not burdensome for new companies to start up their business, right? So the easier it is to start up a business, the more likely it will happen and the more likely they will start operations and producing output, right? So, and when we have more output, the level standard of living will also go up. Technology is also very important. Technology development is encouraged by economic freedom, right? You give freedom to private companies to do research and development and to come up with innovations and inventions, which in turn will help to improve technology and improve the standard of living. So, as companies grow large, they become less flexible and more bureaucratic, which basically means they become less innovative. But innovation generates clones, competition, and expansion. Whenever there is innovation, it helps to create competition and it also helps the company to grow and expand. During this expansion, the successful low-cost producers flourish while others who don't have experience, who do not experience innovation, they'll have high costs and they will suffer. So when they suffer, this failure must happen as it frees up resources so the successful firms can grow. So this failure is needed. So some firms need to fail because they are inefficient. And when they fail, the other firms will be able to grow as resources are fixed in quantity. So as long as the mature industries are not protected by the government, there will be innovations that will occur. So the government can try to protect newly developed industries or those are still developing, but an industry that has been already established shouldn't be protected by government. If they are not doing well, let it be. Then the inefficient ones should go away so the new ones can come in and create more innovations and basically increase the level of output. So standard of again, the purpose of the government and us and the economy as a whole is to basically increase the standard of living by increasing the level of output greater than the population growth. But we can also experience a decline in standard of living in the economy. So the standard of living for an economy can decrease if the number of resources available decreases, or if the country falls behind in technology, or there's too much restriction in terms of economic freedom of the citizens so that they cannot use their talents and energy. For instance, in North Korea, there's too much restrictions. Government is controlling everything. There is no private ownership of resources. So there isn't much innovations and inventions happening in that country. Destructive practices such as war and civil insurrections, as well as diseases such as COVID-19 pandemic, can decrease resources and lower standard of living. Stifling bureaucracy, poorly defined property rights, and corruption, all these things contributed to decrease in resources and output, which in turn leads to decrease in standard of living. Also, high tax rates can inhibit the desire of the entrepreneurs, so new businesses will not come into the economy. There will be less innovations and output will go down. So that's how we will see decline in standard of living. So we learned that in order to increase standard of living, in terms of the labor, we can increase the quantity of labor. We can also increase the quality of labor. We can also increase the quality of land and capital. And this quality of the resource is known as productivity. So productivity is very key in order to raise standard of living. It is measured by comparing the output, what amount of output that resource is producing compared to the input, with labor hours as a proxy for input. Okay, so for labor, the productivity for labor is basically calculated is the total amount of output that one worker produces divided by the number of hours that worker spends to produce that good. That will give the productivity of the labor. Okay. Some productivity measurements are basically, we in our everyday life, some of the productivity measurements that we do are like, let's say, miles per gallon. How much will our car go per gallon of gas? How many miles can we drive per gallon of gas? For a typist, how many words per minute can he type? For a student, what is the grade point per credit hour? So, etc. These are different types of productivity measures. So, I just want to do a quick example of productivity measure, and this is in terms of capital because pump is a type of machine or technology, so it is a capital resource, right? So, here we're given that pump one works for 4 hours and it produces 632 buckets of water in 4 hours, whereas pump 2 only works 3 hours and it produces 507 buckets of water in 3 hours. Okay, now my first question is, what is the productivity of each pump? Okay, so let's look at that. We know productivity is given by output divided by number of hours. So for this pump 1 productivity, we have the total number of output is 632, and we divide this by the number of hours, which is 4. So the productivity for this one is 158 for pump 1. Now same thing we do for pump 2 because that's what we are asking, what is the productivity of each pump. So we calculate the productivity of pump 2. So here, pump 2 produces 507 buckets in 3 hours. So 507 divided by 3, that is equals to 169. So that's the productivity per hour because per hour we're calculating how many buckets of water they're able to produce. So in an hour, pump 1 produces 158 buckets of water. In pump 2, pump 2 in 1 hour produces 169 buckets of water. So the next question is, which one is more productive? Of course, pump 2 is more productive because they can produce more buckets of water in an hour than pump 1. So pump 2 is more productive than pump 1. So there are three basic ways in which productivity can be improved. One is reduction of waste. We have to reduce the amount of waste. It allows more production from the same input of resources. Inefficient processes create waste products in addition to desired goods. As resources become more expensive, there is more incentive to reduce the waste output and increase the desired good output. For instance, let's say sawmills produce both boards and sawdust from logs. So we use logs to produce boards in the sawmills or saw factories, but the byproduct or the waste product was sawdust. But then later, what we did was we used sawdust. Sawdust was a form of pollution, but later, what factory owners and mill owners did is they found an innovative way to recycle the sawdust so that this can be used as an input to a new process to produce particle board. So even that waste product of saw dust was used by the mill owner or factory owners to produce particle boards. So they were using the waste products which helped to improve the efficiency and productivity. Another way to improve productivity is improved efficiency through specialization. So they can specialize in different works, and then also innovation or invention of new machines or new technology. So how does specialization lead to efficiency? We said specialization is one way that can help to improve productivity and efficiency. But how does it do that? So as we specialize in one task, we improve the skills necessary to complete the task. So if we are doing one task again and again, we will get better at it, right? So like just as athletes and musicians, when they practice, they get more better at it. So does production workers. So division of labor, it helps to split up the job into components, tasks, and assigns each task to a separate worker. So let's say if you are building a car, one person will be involved in designing or building the engine, another person will be responsible for painting the car, another person will be responsible for putting in the glasses in the car. So different people will have different, or different workers will have different assigned jobs, and that is known as division of labor. And that specific worker will be doing the same thing again and again. So let's say the painter of the car will always be painting the car, so he will get better at it as he does more and more of it. Okay, so we focus enough to be able to invent new or better tools or processes specialized for that particular task. This ultimately results in more production per hour and hence increased productivity. So people should seek to find the task at which they have comparative advantage over somebody else. So if I need to find out what I'm good at and what I have in what activity I have comparative advantage over others, and I should select that job because I will be good at it and I will be an expert in that. Also, the company or the producer should seek the product where they have a comparative advantage, right? The company, if they know that they can produce laptops better than desktop, they should focus on producing laptops versus telephones or versus desktops, okay? Because they have comparative advantage on that. And we talked about comparative advantage before. So most of the clothes for US are manufactured in the US or Central America because they have comparative advantage in there for manufacturing clothes. And whereas if we produce clothes in the US, we'll be using up resources and our opportunity cost for valuable products such as aircrafts, high-end computers, or high-end telecommunication equipment will not be there. So we focus because the US has competitive advantage on aircrafts and high-end computers, so they focus on that, and they basically get clothes from Asia or Central America because they have competitive advantage on that. That's how trade happens, and that's how we learn about trade as well. So, as an individual, business firm, or a nation, when we specialize in what we do best and become more productive, we gain the financial resources to acquire other things that other individuals, business firms, and nations specialize in producing. We make more of our product and we assume there are no government restrictions. If there are government restrictions, there will be inefficiency. So we assume there are no government restrictions. And we exchange those products to trade for other things produced by those that have competitive advantage in those things. So let's say US is producing aircrafts because they have competitive advantage, but they will trade clothes from Asia and Central America because those countries have comparative advantage in clothes. So they will trade aircrafts to those countries, and in return they will get clothes. Specialization allows countries to use resources that are most suited for the production of those goods and thus have a lower opportunity cost. This ultimately creates an overall gain for the society because more goods can be produced at a lower cost of resources. So, production is more efficient because it is using less resources, which in turn leads to productivity. Another thing that increases productivity, or another thing that increases efficiency, is innovation. Innovation basically involves the use of technology, the application of knowledge. So basically, when you innovation is basically you're coming up with something new using with the use of technology, and you apply your knowledge either to improve the production process or to improve the tools used in the process. So basically, that's what innovation is. You're applying your knowledge, something new, to and where you involve the use of technology either to improve the production process or to improve the tools such as the machines used in the process. So the five ways that innovation can improve production process and gain efficiency. So innovation improves efficiency in five different ways. One is reorganizing the production process. Second is switching resource inputs. Third is mass production. Fourth is mechanization. And fifth is mass markets and mass production. I'm going to go over each of these to discuss in brief, what each of these means, right? So you just have to know when I say innovation helps to improve efficiency through reorganization of production process, what does that mean? And you need to know that, okay? So one way is to basically reorganize the production process. So an example, let me give you an example right away. In the past, auto industry had a batch system to produce cars. They were built one at a time. So workers and factories will spend all their time to spend one car at a time, and then once that's finished, they will focus on another car. And each auto had a particular place on the factory floor, and there was no division of labor. So no workers were specialized in doing anything. But later, there was a reorganization of this production process, and the batch system was converted into an assembly line. So in this process, the cars or the autos were sent through the factory on a conveyor belt, and each part was installed by a worker who specialized in that part. For instance, one worker installed the glasses, one worker installed the tires, one worker installed the doors, and one worker painted the car. So it was going through this conveyor belt, and each of the workers were doing their work, and the workers were specialized in doing what they were doing, and they were working on many cars at one single time. So it became more proficient and productivity increased. So autos were completed much faster now because they were working on several cars at a time, and the cost per car went down. So at the same time, the wages of the workers went up because they were now specialized and they were an expert on in doing what they were doing. So their skills went up, so their wages also went up. So that's one way innovation, like we are innovating new production process from batch system to assembly system that help to increase productivity and efficiency. The second one is called switching resource inputs. So another way you can improve efficiency is to switch resource inputs, right? So a farm can lower costs, improve productivity, and reduce pollution by switching its energy source from coal to natural gas. So again, if the farm, instead of using coal as a natural resource, they use natural gas, then their cost will go down. They will create less pollution, and as a result, productivity will go up. So they're basically just switching their land resource. Okay, so that's one way the innovation can help to improve efficiency. Many repetitive tasks can be accomplished automating the factory with robotics. This means using machinery and equipment that can be pre-programmed to accomplish a particular task or number of tasks as part of the production process. The third way innovation helps to increase productivity or efficiency is mass production. What does that mean? Mass production means you are producing the output in large quantity, at large scale. You're basically producing large number of cell phones or large number of laptops, not just 10 or 12 number of laptops. You're producing thousands and thousands of laptops, which eventually decreases your cost, right? So because economies of scale are the benefits a producer gets from larger and larger production runs. So as you are able to produce more and more output, you're able to enjoy economies of scale. Okay, and you are able to spread the fixed cost over the large amount of output, which basically ultimately lowers your average cost per unit. Okay, so let me do a quick example to show if you produce more and more, how you can reduce your average cost, right? So let's look at this example. Let's say for a firm, the fixed cost is $10 million. This is given for a year, the fixed cost is $10 million, and it remains the same every year. So in year one, the business only produced 10,000 units of output. In year two, the business produced 100,000 output, and in year three, the business becomes very established and they are able to expand and increase the output, and they produce 1 million, 1 million output or units of output. So, what is the average cost per unit? So, in year one, if you divide 10 million divided by your 10,000 output, your average cost is basically, if you divide this, will be $1,000 per unit. In the second year, again, your fixed cost is 10 million, and you divide this by 100,000. That is basically $100 per unit. And then in the third year, again, your average cost, your total fixed cost is 10 million, but now you're producing 1 million output. So when you divide that, your average cost is $10 per unit, average cost. So what's happening? As you are producing more and more output, your average cost per unit is decreasing. So you are able to enjoy economies of scale and expand your production and increase your productivity. So that is one way, mass production. By producing a large output, you're able to reduce your cost and increase your productivity. So most materials and components used in production process are sold in a manner to encourage large quantity purchases. Manufacturers can spread these costs over a long production run and experience economies of scale. So the key benefit of scale. So when you enjoy economies of scale, the company basically is able to lower the production cost. Okay, they are able to lower down the cost of production. So that's another way you can increase efficiency. The fourth way to increase efficiency through innovation is called mechanization. So as tasks become more repetitive, so let's say if the production process involves a repetitive job, such as putting a door into a car again and again and again and again, then then the farms or the factory owners can replace the low skilled workers with machines, and these machines are more skilled and more efficient in performing those jobs. Using labor is a better option, especially when there are some changes in the work. When you have to customize the work, that's when you need a person, because a person has the brain and he can think and basically customize the job based on the requirement. But if the job is, let's say, to sweep the floor every day at 6 p.m. and it does not need any type of innovation, then we can use a robot to perform that, because the robot will be more efficient in performing that job. So factory automation also leads to the creation of high skilled and high paid jobs. So because when we use these automated machine or mechanizations, the cost of production decreases, production price falls, and because of competition among producers. So lower prices means satisfaction of consumers will go up, demand will go up. So at the end of the day, we are going to have higher demand and higher satisfaction. So that is one way we can improve efficiency, is through mechanization for repetitive jobs. And the final way is basically mass markets. So the final and the fifth way is the creation of mass markets. So you will sell your products to a large market, and it doesn't have to be one market. You can sell your products in Texas, in Nebraska, in New York, in California, or you can sell your products even to Canada, England, India, everywhere. So that way you have a mass market. You're serving people from different parts of the country, and that will help you to achieve that will help you to achieve lower cost of production and basically will improve your efficiency. Selling into larger market gives producers or businesses an opportunity to experience economies of scale. So when you experience economies of scale, cost of production decreases, prices go down, and you are able to compete more in the market and sell more. So demand goes up and satisfaction goes up, right? So consumers experience lower prices and demand goes up. An example would be, let's say, Toyota produces autos or cars for sale in many markets. They just don't produce Toyota cars to be sold in the Japanese market. They produce Toyota cars to sell worldwide, in Asia, in US, in North America, in Australia. So they do this, they sell their products in many markets and enjoy the benefits of mass markets and mass production, and basically have an excellent reputation for product quality at reasonable prices. They are able to price the cars at a reasonable rate because of mass production and mass market. Now, if Toyota only decided to stay within Japan and sell in the Japanese market, then they would not be able to sell the cars at such a low price. Then the cost of production would be much higher and prices of the cars would be higher. So by doing mass production and by selling in mass markets, they're able to enjoy economies of scale, lower the cost of production, lower the price, and thereby help consumers enjoy lower prices and increase their satisfaction. So these are the five different ways innovation can help to improve, um, you know, um, efficiency, and productivity. So, what are the causes of economic growth? The following are the causes. When any of these or a combination of these happen, we are going to experience economic growth in the economy. When there is an increased amount of resources in the society, when there is an expanded capital good base, if we have more capital goods, then we are going to experience economic growth because these capital goods will be used to produce final goods and services or consumer goods in the future. If there is increased or improvements in the technology, we're going to experience economic growth. If there is improvements in the productivity of the resources, we will experience economic growth. If there is protection of individual property rights provided by the government, if there is economic freedom, if there is better infrastructure, there is more peace and stability in the economy, no war, no corruption, and then also low or no political corruption. And finally, we have a favorable tax climate and regulatory climate. If taxes are high, business activities will go down, and output will fall, and economy will start to decline. So when economic growth happens, the following happens in the economy. Customers or consumers, they are able to get more output or more goods and services at lower prices. So their demand goes up, they have more choices but at lower prices. So they are able to maximize their satisfaction. So consumer satisfaction goes up, which means higher standard of living. They are able to enjoy higher standard of living and they have a better economic well-being. Poverty rates will go down, working conditions will improve in the factory, people are gonna get more income, therefore they will have more leisure time or for vacation times. There will be concern for the environment. People will be more aware about the environment. They want to protect the environment. They want to make sure pollution is taken care of. Factory owners will ensure that they are taking care of pollution so that the environment is not getting affected. And finally, there is greater ability to deal with environmental and poverty problems when we experience economic growth. So all these things are good things. So we want to experience economic growth. So that is the end of this lecture. We're going to stop here. I covered a lot of topics. So if you missed something, you can always go back to the slide and read. Most of it was reading stuff. So I'm guessing if you read the slides, you will understand it. In the video lecture, I tried to elaborate it with examples. So hopefully it will help you to understand. So I'm going to end here. You guys take care. And in the next video lecture, I'll come back with lecture 14. Thank you very much. Have a good day.